Hi, I'm Annie Botticelli, and welcome to my May 2020 horoscope report for you. I am over the moon excited to announce the launch of my new book, Planetology: How to Align with the Natural Rhythms of the Universe. And this is published through Watkins Media in the UK, and facilitating distribution worldwide is our partner, Penguin Random House. You can look up Annie Planetology in any search and you will find it for pre-order, and you can get more information about it. I'm very excited, and I hope it really helps you because that's the intention of my creating it. So I'm going to give you a quick introduction here, just about some general things to know, and then we'll get into some sign-specific, a lot of sign-specific things, really focused on Venus retrograde, where it's going to show up for your sign, and the special things to know about that, and also where this June 5th eclipse is going to show up in your chart. This is really critical because we are entering eclipse season very hot and heavy as of May. You might start to see eclipse manifestations even in April, 6 to 8 weeks before the eclipses tend to get very hot. And we've got this grand finale of the Capricorn Cancer eclipse cycle. So lots of things involving home and work. And as we see now with what's going on with the coronavirus and all of the breakdown of things in the world that seem to be related to the coronavirus, but really all of this is astrological. A lot of topics of home and work and working from home and distance, everything about distance and distancing is coming up in a big way. So this eclipse cycle is going to bring a lot of information about how this is all going to go. Definitely stay tuned after this video. I will be putting at the end my video called The Astrology of 2020, and that's going to be my input on the coronavirus as it relates to the astrology, things that are going on with the systems in the world, and how I believe we can make the most of the opportunities that are coming and deal with the challenges that are also here. Okay, so definitely listen for that after this video. So there are 3 eclipses, one on June 5th, a lunar eclipse at 15 degrees of Sagittarius. Then we have on June 21st, a solar eclipse at 0 degrees. And then we have on July 5th, a lunar eclipse at 13 degrees of Capricorn. Okay, so in the May report, I'm going to show you where this June eclipse is happening. In the June report, I'm going to talk about the locations of the 2nd June eclipse, where that is going to be for you. And in the July report, I'll talk about the location of the July eclipse. Okay, so between 3 horoscopes, we'll cover all of the energies, how that's going to look for you. Venus retrograde is very, very major right now because we are actually in it May 13th through June 25th. Venus, the ruler of love and relationships, money and finances, and beauty and self-esteem and design projects and artistic expression. Major rulership of the domains of Venus are coming up in a big way. And I have created lots of resources for you, including a Venus retrograde blog that you can find if you just search for Annie Botticelli Venus retrograde. You'll find all of these resources that I have. And in these May videos, I am going to show you in the chart where that is for you. I've had a lot of requests to go back to the format where I show you the charts and show you more specific detail for the early, middle, and late degree placements, what certain things look like. From the last eclipse cycle, I had some terrible endings that happened then that I had to work with, so I wasn't able to put the extra time in with doing the charts, but now in this month I'm bringing them back. So definitely please let me know if you want me to keep doing that, because I do listen to your feedback. I listen to nice feedback. If people are mean, I don't listen to them. So anything nicely worded, I definitely take into consideration. So we've got a really very important month here. 2020 is one of the most pivotal years of our time. And so May is another cog in the wheel of this time. So I'm going to go into a lot of those details of what that Venus retrograde specifically is going to look like. So let's go ahead and drill down to this sign specific. Oh wait, one more thing. I am creating a free course on claiming victory from viruses. Okay, this topic is very near and dear to my heart, which I will explain in detail in the actual course, why I know so much about this. Spirit has been prepping me to assist with viruses for a while, and there's just way too much information on this topic for me to bring out in the videos. So I'm going to create a whole class about this that I'll continue adding to. So you can register for that class at lumelife.com, L-U-M-E life.com. Search for Luminous Life Multiversity in my name, and you can see there in the free course listings that you can enroll in the school and in the course for free, so that you can understand how to protect yourself from viruses, understand what they're doing. And I also will go into quite a bit of detail about the bigger picture of how viruses are part of our human evolution and how to work with them in the video called Astrology of 2020 that will follow this video. Okay, so now let's go into the sign-specific movement of Venus retrograde and what types of implications we can see from this and that placement of the June 5th eclipse for you.
Hello, Cancer friends. Okay, so it's time to look to see exactly where Venus is going to be retrograde for you, to see exactly where this first eclipse in what I call the triad of transformation, that is series of 3 eclipses that we have coming in June and July, because remember, you will start to feel those effects early, and especially in May is prime time for manifestations. We will also talk about some of the other astrology and how it may affect Cancer placements. And I'm going to bring back the charts. I've had a lot of requests for the charts. I'm sorry that I had to have them go away for a while, as I had some personal things going on and couldn't put the extra time in to add them. But they are back. So we are going to go in deep here. So many of the things I talk about will be true for all Cancer placements, and if so, I will say that as I'm talking about them. But there are certain areas that will be divided into early, middle, and late degree placements. So basically, each sign is cut into 3 sections. So early Cancer is the June born, or 0 to 9 degrees. This report is also just as valid for you if Cancer is your rising sign or your moon. Okay, middle degree Cancer is around July 1st through 10th, or 10 to 19 degrees. And late degree Cancer is around July 11th through the rest of the sign, or 20 to 29 degrees. The reason why I say days around is because the sun doesn't move into Cancer on the same day each year. So depending on what day it was when you were born, these dates could toggle by, a day or 2. But this will get you close enough. Okay, so let's see, I'm going to use the late degree chart to just talk about some general things that are true for everyone, and then we'll start to dig a little deeper. Every month we have the personal planets, which are the ones closest to us, moving through different signs. The personal planets move pretty quickly, and so those are some of the things that change the most month to month, which is why we track them in monthly horoscopes. So we still have quite a bit of representation of Taurus here, and Taurus placements flow really well with Cancer placements because they make that magical 60-degree angle, and that gives opportunities. They are sometimes opportunities that need to, you need to do something with them. But, I always call this the ingredients on a counter angle, because you have ingredients on a counter to make a dish, but if you keep passing by and the dish isn't made, then you can't say, where's my food? It's something you may have to do a little work to get the best outcome. So we've got that going on. The Taurus energy of the sun moving, making that nice angle for Cancer will be in effect for, until around, 3 weeks in, basically. So that's most of the month. And then Mercury will switch over a little quicker. Now, when the planets move from Taurus into Gemini, they'll join this other Gemini crowd here. And in general, Gemini energy is a little bit mixed up. It makes me think of this, this Disney story called Snow White and the Mixed Up Morning, where the dwarves get all mixed up. And they're not true to their usual things that they do. And that's what this energy reminds me of, because Gemini energy on its own is very scattered. So this month is going to be very busy. In some ways, I think that the busyness might be a reprieve, because I'm hoping that this busyness will return things back to normal, well, our new normal for some people with the changes in the world. And at bare minimum, even if there isn't a degree of normalcy that's coming back, it's like running around, catching up with things. It's kind of the energy that reminds me of running errands, and running errands is something that we're not doing in the time where everybody's on lockdown, but it's that kind of energy. So in the event that we're still on lockdown when these energies start, it would be the equivalent of like, I gotta do this, gotta do this, gotta do this, gotta do this, driving around the town doing things, except it would be in your home. Okay, but I'm hoping that everyone will be out and about getting things done. But expect it to be busy. You know, a lot of communication, a lot of interaction, a lot of possibly catching up with things, maybe a lot of physical movement. But that energy doesn't really flow very smoothly with Cancer energy. It's more mental and less emotional. It's more kind of logical rather than intuitive, you know, so it's just a little bit awkward, and it is a little bit more of a stretch for Cancers when this energy presents, unless you're a Cancer that has a lot of energy in Gemini, like if you're cuspy to Gemini or you have other placements in Gemini, then maybe this is a language that you'll understand better. I always look at the signs and the, you know, the movements of the planets as like languages, okay? So like the retrogrades have a language, moving direct has a language, each sign has its language. And that language is something that other people with similar placements will understand, or will say, like, you're not speaking my language, right? So a lot of the stars are not speaking your language this month, and you will feel that. But, you know, it doesn't have to be anything crazy terrible about it. It's just a little bit annoying, and you may have to push a little bit more to use the energies, or step out of some of your normal ways in order to use the energies in the best way. Okay, so now let's talk about Venus retrograde. I did talk quite a bit about Venus retrograde in April, and I am going to talk about it again because this is a 4-month-long stint that we have here, and Venus rules love, beauty, it's our beautiful woman, beauty and money. And with the beauty is also artistic endeavors, design projects, things like that. So between love and relationships, money and finances, you know, beauty and design and all of this, Venus covers a massive amount of ground. It's retrograde from the days around May 13th through June 25th. And I say around because depending on your time zone, these dates could shift a little bit. And the pre-shadow period starts around April 9th or 10th. And lasts through, when, you know, after it goes direct, lasts until around July 29th or 30th. And these shadow periods are very critical because they add to the length of time that we experience the retrograde energies in these areas of life. I had somebody post about something that I wanted to share with you just to clarify in case anyone else is having the same confusion. They said, Annie, I'm not buying into shadow periods before and after the retrogrades. Okay, so shadow periods are mathematical calculations based on the degree that a sign goes retrograde and the degree that a sign goes direct. For people who know how to calculate them, they're mathematical certainties. They're not, let's see, how someone might experience them has a range of subjectivity, but the actual shadow period itself and the effects as it's like moving into, like a transit is moving into its strength and moving away from its strength, that's actually a certainty. That's not something that I made up or something that's, you know, really able to be debated. It just is. And because of that, the types of things that, and the guidelines to follow or to consider at least for Venus retrograde are in effect from that whole period from April 9th or 10th through the end of July. Doesn't mean you can't do anything. There are many things that are very well indicated. And I have created a massive amount of resources for you to use so that you can understand these energies. So if you search for Annie Botticelli Venus retrograde, you'll see my video on the topic. Definitely check out my blog if you search at anniehelpsyou.com. On my astrology blog, if you do in the search function, just put in Venus retrograde, you'll see my Venus retrograde do's and don'ts blog. And that's a written version of the video. And that has updates over the years as people would post under the video. Well, what about this? What about this? Is this included? You know, so I've updated and made a very long blog to try to put in some of the caveats, put in some more of the details. So to really use this energy the best, it would be good for you to look at that. Also, I have a Venus retrograde through the signs and houses blog. So looking at my blog, Venus retrograde in Gemini would be great for everybody because that's the sign that it's in. It's retrograde from 21 degrees back to 5 degrees, and we are going to look in the charts to see for early, middle, and late what houses this takes place for you. But in general, the retrograde calls things into question that were already set. It can bring in things from in the departments of love, beauty, money, design from the past that you may have worked on. Things might come to fruition in this time. In general, it's a time to reconsider things or to consider things, but it's not always the best time for a huge launch. And really that does tend to be true even if you have Venus retrograde at birth, because, well, it's complicated, but if you read all the pieces that I've written on this, if you have Venus retrograde at birth, you'll see what I mean. The reason why people who have personal planets that are in retrograde at birth, why they tend to have an easier time during the actual transit, is because it's speaking their language, like I spoke of before. If you live your life in a way that's true to a Venus retrograde type of energy, then when Venus is direct, it's going to be more awkward for you than when Venus is in retrograde because you speak that language. So caution in money, caution with love, caution with design. Just, there are a lot of things to it, but that's, just to help you kind of understand that. Okay, so it's really good to experiment with things, but so basically the rules, or we'll say guidelines rather than rules. If it's low stakes, easy to fix, short term, don't worry about it. Just do whatever you want. Okay? It's the high stakes, hard to fix, hard to change, long-term things that you want to be more careful of. And there are a lot of guidelines about, division of property, separations, divorces, so you can look to the resources for that. All right, so let's look to see for the early degree placements where 21 to 5, back to 5 degrees are. That's going to be basically here in the 12th house. Okay, we'll talk more about what this looks like, but I just want to get everyone on the map. All right, so then middle degree placements, you tend to be bridged between houses with transits, and that is true again here because 21 degrees back to 5 degrees is going to cover the 11th and 12th house. And then for late degree placements, for most of you, that's going to be pretty purely in the 11th house. Some of you can have some whispers, like the earlier part of the late degree placements may have some whispers in this 12th house, but the predominance of your transit's going to be in the 11th house. So let's talk about what that looks like. Get all this off the screen. Okay, so for the early and middle degree placements, we talked about the 12th house being highlighted. Maybe you have some whispers for you late degree friends. Middle and late degree friends, you've got this 11th house, and of course I guess we could say maybe some early could have some whispers, but your predominance is there and your predominance is there. So let's talk about the 11th house first. In order to understand what a transit can do, I always think it's interesting the words that people use for horoscopes. Predictions, predict that this is going to happen, or predict that this is not going to happen, or whatever. I don't really like to look at it in the form of predictions. I like to look at it in the form of understanding the energy, the energetic potentials that are increased at that time. What's going to happen? I don't know. Nobody knows what's going to happen for sure. And even for the people that might be right about this exact thing or this and that, it's hit or miss. Even the best psychics who are just purely doing psychic work, they are not completely on target with everything 100% of the time, right? So what we're looking at is an increase in energetic potentials. And just like with rain, if there's an 80% chance that it's going to rain, a lot of times it rains. But 20% of the time it won't rain. You see what I mean? But to look at this, we want to look at retrograde plus Venus plus the house, and that equals the increase in likelihood for an outcome. That's our little equation here, okay? So retrogrades bring things from the past. So there's a very increased chance that opportunities or challenges from the past are going to feature heavily in the manifestations of this time. So retrograde, can bring good things back from the past, like things you worked on, or suddenly a contact comes in, like, hey, I haven't heard from that person for a long time, or yeah, I remember meeting you at some meeting or something, and now they're like, hey, you want a job or something like that. But but something from the past. Or it could be that problem, like that argument that you and your spouse always have. It always comes back, no matter what you've done. The retrograde brings the unresolved issue from the past. You see, so retro means past. Okay, so we're going to have past be part of our equation. Venus, we know that that's the love, the beauty. That's my beautiful lips there. Just excuse those and pretend they're pretty. And money. Okay, so we add past plus love, beauty, money, design, plus the house. The house now is friendships, acquaintances, teams, groups, large organizations, internet-based projects, community efforts, neighborhood things having to do with the greater good, or like the good for all. So here's an example of how we would tie this together. Let's say Venus retrograde has put your job into question or made you not have a job, okay? Now, the energy of Venus gets you thinking, that idea that I had about making money, that idea I had in the past about making money in this way that was good for humanity, maybe it's time to bring that out, you know? And you might start considering that. Now, it's not always the best time to implement it. You have to follow the flow, though. Sometimes it could be. And again, if it's short term, like one time I started a pet sitting business when Venus was retrograde in my 6th house of pets. And I knew going into it, it was going to be short term. I wanted it to be short term. And it was successful in that short term. And then after the Venus cycle ended, which is, it's an 18-month cycle. And sometimes we see a half a cycle come into play, like a 9-month. So after 9 months, it fizzled out. And that's actually when my other stuff started to come open in a big way. So I knew it was short term going into it. So you see what I mean? You have to kind of play with this. But so this kind of thing, friendships can come from the past. Maybe you had an argument with a friend and you were distanced. Maybe they'll come back again, But if you need a job, if you need money, if you're looking for, a relationship, things from the past are going to show up more strongly and be a better place to look than some new things, unless those new things are short term or have a tilt to the past. Okay, so the 12th house. So again, we're going to put the past, we're going to put plus Venus, you remember the things there, and then we're going to put plus the 12th house, then equals the outcome, okay? So the 12th house has to do with things done in secret. And this can be things done in your past, things done on your behalf. So for instance, maybe a family member or a friend of the family put some money, Venus, aside for you in the past, and now, as this Venus retrograde is occurring, this thing going on in the past comes out to you. Like, oh, hey, your Uncle Freddie put some money away for you when you turn this certain age or whenever you need something, and now here it is. So something like that. So someone doing something on your behalf, and that may become known to you in this time, or it may be going on and you don't even know about it, but it's still manifesting, and you might find out later that it was happening during this time. Also, Venus in the 12th house rules clandestine love relationships. So secret love affairs and secret or private love connections are in here. So somebody from the past that you had a relationship with, you might start seeing them again more privately. And even just like the private world of couples that are in relationship, doing stuff in a sacred space, in a quiet space, on a retreat with your beloved, it rules things like that. From the money perspective, it's really good for that, for scheduling time with your honey, and trying to get away from the craziness and just spend time together and breathe life back into your relationship. Regarding money, you could have an idea from the past and you start working on it in the backdrop. The 12th house is very much in the backdrop. Or you can have an idea or a project about a 12th house rulership that you want to make money from in the future, or that you're currently making money from. So like, let's say you do hypnotherapy, or you'd like to, past life regression, psychology, working with the Akashic records, or talking to guides. Anything that's in the 12th house could be related to making money from that. And maybe you did that in the past, and Venus retrograde can bring you back to that. So there are many other ways that these can manifest, and definitely go to anniehelpsyou.com, go to the astrology blog and use the search function, and you can look at Venus Retro in 12th and Venus Retro in 11th. I have whole separate blogs on that give more information on how you can best use that energy. I have affirmations, I have resources that I recommend for that time so that you can, just really make the most of this time. Every transit, whether it's hard or easy, is a blessing, especially if we choose to see it that way, and especially if we choose to understand the energy and what it's best used for. So kind of like a relative gives you something for Christmas and you're like, what the heck is it, right? It's a doodly wop, okay? Well, I'm not familiar with what that is. But then you look it up and you're like, oh my gosh, I can understand why my aunt is so excited about this thing because it does all this cool stuff in the kitchen, right? So it's like the more you dive into things that you're not familiar with as far as these transits, the more you can see how you can use those things and how they can help you in your life. Okay, so now let's talk about the eclipses. We'll just move that out of the way again. So my discussion for this triad of transformation eclipses is going to cover 3 months of horoscopes and I also have a separate eclipse series. I used to cover every single possible thing I could think of for the eclipse in certain houses for whoever, for where it was going to be for you in the horoscope video. But it got a little bit heavy on it and made them really long. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to show you in the chart what houses are going to be affected for early, middle, and late. We're going to do this June 1 here in May because it's early June, June 5th, lunar eclipse at 15 degrees of Sag. Lunar eclipse, 15 degrees of Sagittarius. And we'll talk about this one now, and then the solar eclipse at 0 degrees of Cancer on the 21st of June. We'll talk about that in June. And then in July, we'll talk about the July 5th eclipse. And since I always post these early, you'll have them in plenty of time to understand them. So we're going to find them on the map. But first, let's understand this. This is a beautiful eclipse cycle. You might not recognize it as a beautiful eclipse cycle, but that's what it is. So this whole thing is an eclipse cycle. Eclipse cycles happen over around 1.5 years, 2 years, 2-ish years, something like that. So every 6 months within the time that an eclipse cycle is happening within a sign polarity. So we're starting the Sagittarius Gemini polarity, and then we're finishing up the Cancer Capricorn polarity that was in process from 2018 to 2020. There are hot spots. So anything along the Sagittarius Gemini polarity can happen for anyone in the zodiac. And then the houses that are aspected for you, which we're going to see, those things can get active and have lots of transformation and shuffling around of energy and big news and big learning curves and big opportunities during the whole cycle. But kind of like when a pot is boiling, that's the fire, and okay, right? So the pot is on the heat, the whole eclipse cycle. But it's kind of when it's at these bottom points where it's further from the actual eclipses, it's like a little rolling boil. Okay, it's just kind of simmering. And then as we get 4 to 6 weeks before the eclipse, even sometimes 4 to 8 weeks. So really this June 5th eclipse, stuff can start happening in April. Like really notable things. And then as you get closer to it, this boiling water, like bubbles start going all over the place and things start getting crazy and it's emotional. And I like this analogy because water represents emotion and things just start bubbling all over the place eclipse wise. And then after the eclipse, when you turn the heat down, things are kind of bubbling crazy, and then it's dying down. Okay, and then back to this simmer. And then when you get to the next 6-month eclipse cycle, the same thing happens again. So it just like rolls up into a boil and then down into a simmer. So anything along the fronts of Sagittarius are going to be big topics. And of course, we can already see distance learning, distance working coming up in the backdrop, right? And this is going to be developed more over the next couple of years of this eclipse cycle of Gemini and Sagittarius. And we'll have more information about what that's going to look like for each person as we get closer to the eclipse time. But this is a storyline that's going to be in process. Okay, so yes, that's what I wanted to talk about there. Okay, so it's at 15 degrees of Sagittarius. So for early degree placements, that's going to be in the 6th house. Talk about what that means soon. And then for middle degree placements, as usual with you guys, it's on the line here, a little exactly tilted this way or this way, depending on your exact middle degree placement, but definitely in fair range to manifest in either or both the 5th or 6th houses for the middle degree placements. And then there was our late degree friends. So 15 degrees pulls back more likely into the 5th house, but depending on your exact degree, you could have some whispers there in the 6th house. So what does all this mean? In general, lunar eclipses tend to bring endings, but coded within the ending is also the beginning. So, it's always hard to tell where an ending picks off and a new beginning begins. So drama, fruition, lunar eclipses tend to be more emotional than the solar eclipses unless those solar eclipses are hitting you at an exact angle. Now, the Sagittarius Gemini eclipse cycle is a little more challenging for Cancers because of the angle. Like Sagittarius is, here, we'll bring this back on the screen so you can see this. I'm using the late degree placement chart, but this is true for all of you. All right, so here's Cancer, and we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so Sagittarius is 5 signs away from Cancer. That means it's a 150 degree angle, also called a quincunx angle, which is awkward. So it's awkward. It's more awkward for you. So those of you who are Cancers that are between 10 and 20 degree placements, or from like the 1st through 10th of July, you guys are going to have the most precise hit from this. And the closer you are to like the 5th, 6th, 7th of July birthdays or 15 degrees, it's going to be more powerful. Don't fear it though, okay? Because sometimes, yes, eclipses do bring things that we don't like and they're non-negotiable, and we look back on them and say that really sucked and I hate it and I wish it didn't happen, and that does happen. But a lot of times it just cracks something open for you. And even in the cases where things are bad, like bad things that occur, there's a lot of beautiful things that tend to come from it also. And the more you look out for those things, the more you'll see them. But in any case, they're not something to fear, because the universe is getting you on track, okay? So eclipses, this is kind of interesting. The nodes in the chart talk about our karma and our dharma. And our karma are the karma is the things that we came here to clear up, whether it's our ancestral karma, our individual karma. We're here clearing that up. Nodal placements work with karma. The North Node has to do with dharma, our highest expression this lifetime. And eclipses happen on the ecliptic, on the nodal path. So eclipses are directly related to karma and dharma. And so it helps people to get on track. So like, let's say you're in the woods, which I always imagine, Infinite Spirit is looking at us like, oh, they're kind of lost in the woods, right? And maybe here's where you're trying to go. And all the trees are here, and you start out going in that direction, and then somewhere you start going this way. And then an eclipse comes, it clears up karma that was causing you to deviate, sets you on your track, and then puts you on a beeline towards where you're supposed to be going. And that's what they do. So if you can understand that sometimes unwelcome things have to happen to put us on a certain trajectory, then it kind of puts it in perspective. Okay. But since we can't see all of the placements in your chart, it's just looking at one layer to see how it's going to hit your particular Cancer placement. All right, so back to what we were talking about here. So 6th house, we've got early and middle, possibly, the little whisper for the late. And then the 5th house, we have middle and late, possibly with a little whisper for the early, but this is the predominance. So endings, beginnings, notable occurrences. For 6th house, that's health. Okay, so many people are going to have health wake-up calls. Sometimes those health wake-up calls are not going to be from your own troubles, though. Sometimes they can be from somebody else having trouble and you saying, I better straighten up my act. Like someone at work has a heart attack because of the stress, and you're like, wow, I've been pretty stressed out. Maybe I better do something serious about cutting my stress back. And then that affects you, so then you take the changes, but you didn't necessarily have to have something happen to you personally. You see, and it does work that way sometimes, where spirit gives us messages through things that happen around us. And the 6th house is the house of work and your neighbors and your, it's one of the neighborhood kind of local houses. We have different ways that comes up in the chart, but it's like, it's health, it's diet, it's, something notable. So if you have any symptoms, get them checked out, which I always recommend anyway, but things could come to a head and you could learn more about what you're working with. Okay, so also this has to do with pets. This has to do with anything with animals or working with animals. This can have to do with your business. So business, you could end a business and begin a new one, or you could lose a job and then get a new job, or someone that you were working with could leave and that could profoundly affect you. So some changes in the workplace tend to come with that. When we look at eclipses in the 5th house, the 5th house rules romance, romantic relationships, is also called the house of true love. It rules everything from the process of falling in love, being in love, dealing with your relationship, the conception of a child, the making of a child, the conception of a child, the things we do to make children, the birth, the pregnancy process, the birth process, the child rearing process, all of that is in the 5th house. So anything having to do with children and, your own or others are fair game for the 5th house. So notable things involving children. Sometimes we see at eclipses notable milestones, like a child graduating, a child moving out of the house, a child coming of age in some way, or something notable with their relationships or something else in their life. So that is all fair game. The 5th house also rules fun and hobbies. And so it could mean you stop doing something that's a hobby and you take on a new hobby, or you stop doing a hobby as just a hobby and you take it on as work. You convert it into something for work. Since the 5th house is also ruling fun, it's you also might see this like overdoing fun. So these are just a couple of quick kind of pieces about these eclipses, but if you want to see more and more examples of how I see this manifest, then I've made a special eclipse series. So if you go to AnnieHelpsYouTV.com or just Annie Botticelli YouTube, on my homepage, I'm going to have an eclipse series that I created, and that is going to have, so what you will want to do is the early and middle, you'll want to look for eclipses in 6th house or Virgo. Okay, and that's going to speak to the houses that this is going to be for you. And then middle and late, you want to look for the video that says eclipse in 5th house or Leo. That's the title of it. And that's going to give more information about where you can expect this. And then as I give you the eclipse placements in June and July for the other ones, then you can go to that eclipse series as well. So it's definitely a major time of transformation. We're going to see a lot of major endings and beginnings starting, and all under this sort of nest or umbrella of the Venus retrograde.
Okay, so definitely look in the notes below this video. If you click the little arrow that says more underneath the video, it will reveal written notes. In those notes, I have the links to my Venus retrograde video. I have the links to the blogs for Venus retrograde through the signs and houses. And I also have the link to loomlife.com, which is where you can register for that free class on claiming victory from viruses. And you can also see my other resources, including my course, Becoming a Professional Astrologer. Astrology is always important, but in these times of what the types of things that are going on now, understanding astrology in a different way can be very, very helpful to our own individual peace and process, and for helping others. So if you want to learn to do that, you can check that out at loomlife.com as well, L-U-M-E life.com. And you can see more blogs at AnnieHelpsYou.com. I have lots and lots of blogs. And at CozyBySweetStarlight.com, you can, again, this link will be in the notes underneath as well. You can find written horoscopes by me and astrology kissed blogs, how to use astrology in your day-to-day in wonderful ways. Most of the resources that I create for you are free, so make sure that you tap into those. I only have a very small amount of paid services compared to my free resources, and those are for people who want to go deeper into my teachings and my work. But otherwise, just know that there's so much for you. Just explore the websites that I'm sending you to. So I hope you have a wonderful month. I hope that you can stay positive and make the most of the opportunities that are coming to us through these transits, the big ones and the small ones. Venus retrograde is actually a big one, but it's kind of dwarfed in some ways underneath the titans of the zodiac clashing in these Capricorn placements. But it still is going to have Venus retrograde, even though it's on this different level than these big guys. It's really going to have a lot of effect on your day-to-day experience during this month and beyond. So I do hope you have the best month possible, and I'll see you soon. Bye.